So the idea for A Face in the Crowd and the overall concept of, I suppose, the Discover Recover project came from, I suppose, the idea that, I suppose, we all learn through stories. And I know myself as a clinician, I was thinking, well, how did I learn to come and understand more about recovery and what recovery meant to clients? And it really was from the clients themselves sharing their stories, and also fellow clinicians as well, how they would impart knowledge around mental health and the experience of mental health to me over my course of my career was through stories and telling people's narratives.
So the Discover Recover Theatre Project is a drama education initiative. What that means is that it's a two-part model. I suppose central part of the model is the play A Face in the Crowd, where we hear of the lived experiences of our storytellers, and I suppose we hope that people will learn something from hearing those stories and experiencing that live drama piece, which we've heard time and time again about how positive the impact of that is. The second part, which is really, really important to us, and I suppose from the Wexford Mental Health Association's point of view and the project team, was our hope that, okay, we need to make sure that this work is impacting on people in a way that's safe and effective. So we designed the workshops in such a way that a young person might come to see the play on a Tuesday, and then 2 days later they would have a workshop coming to them in their school. The workshop gives young people an opportunity to maybe revisit some of the stories that they heard, but also an opportunity to look at their own mental health, their own well-being.
The initial invitation was actually quite a simple invitation, but quite a powerful one at the same time, where it was just, well, what is your story? And do you feel there's anything in your story, the story of your recovery experience, that other people could learn from? And that was really what people responded to, and the people who attended the workshops, the initial storytelling workshops, that what they were there to do. They felt they had something meaningful to share, that they wanted to share with both the people in the group, but also maybe the wider community.
It is now 20 years since I have been hospitalised with my diagnosis of schizoaffective. I had what is known as a nervous breakdown when I was 22 and began my constant struggle with living with mental illness. I have been hospitalised several times over the following years, suffering terribly and at times suicidal. I often became totally deluded and paranoid. I was paranoid, I was being poisoned, and every injection would kill me. With new medication, things improved, and I now have long spells of feeling well. In telling my story, I wanted it to relate with anyone that is struggling and in despair. There is hope. Even if you're feeling desperate, you will get well. Keep telling yourself that.
Part of it, I would have to say, like, I worked 35 years as a nurse, and in all my years working, I found that actually we never really listen. Like, practitioners don't listen. We listen for symptoms. Somebody comes in, say they have a headache, we prescribe a Panadol. Somebody coming in saying they're depressed, we prescribe an antidepressant, and there's a pill for every ill. But I found during this process, the stories were just pure, raw and honest. And from it we got these amazing stories. We got stories of the young girl who celebrated her 21st when she was in hospital, and she remembers that as a positive experience because the nurses made a fuss out of her. We got the story of a young fella coming up to the leaving cert where he was standing in the smoking shed. For the very first time in his life, shadows started appearing. And he said when he was telling that story, he said, these shadows followed me all the way home and they've been following me ever since. We got the story of the loneliness and the isolation of an illness, whereby at the weekend somebody would go home and they wouldn't hear from a single soul till the following Monday. And then we addressed the topic of suicide in a very raw and honest way, and the impact of suicide has on family and on community and those left behind. And we addressed that throughout the play, and the whole key message there is for kids and people who see the play to ask for help, that life is too short, and never be afraid to ask for help.
I can still be a little bit affected by it, but it's in the past now and I've accepted it. But to see children there and, if they're in the schoolyard and, that lonely young fella be there and, he can be helped or she can be helped, to be very important. If you could just help that one person, that's, everything back to myself, but you know, if I had to got that chance, I'm okay now, but to be brilliant.
There was two things happening, I suppose, at the same time as we were working on this project, which was based and centred around people's personal narratives. A lot was happening in the background in the service in terms of a shift in focus from a more medicalised model to a more recovery orientated and person-centred model. So we really tried, I suppose this project really embraced that. It was all about the person story, the personal narrative, the personal experience. And I suppose what it did was brought together a collective of personal experiences. That sort of, some of which people would have found very new, a new and fresh perspective. You know, it wasn't telling the old story in the asylums or any of that. It was a telling of the person's experience of their own recovery journey, how they interacted with the services with that, but also how they interacted with their families.
I think we're at a very interesting place in Ireland around mental health policy. Just in the last number of weeks, we've had Sharing Division, a new policy. And this policy is about bringing people back into their natural communities and making sure that they get really good outcomes in their lives. So Face the Crowd actually illustrates that so well in the whole area of recovery. Sometimes people don't fully believe that people who develop mental health issues actually do recover and regain their place back in their community, back in home life, back in school, back in college, back in work. And Face the Crowd illustrates that so well and makes it a very real and believable piece, not just a statistical example. So I think that's been a really, really effective piece of Facing the Crowd. And I think it's moved outside of its own natural context in Wexford, but across the country people can immediately relate to this. So I think under the new mental health policy of Sharing Division, I think Facing the Crowd has a really important role to play there.
And things that were once just words for us, you know, like schizophrenia or manic depression, bipolar, any other kind of psychosis, become part of our everyday. And when we step outside our door in the morning, all we are is a face in the crowd.
The role of Wexford Mental Health Association within the project initially was to support it going from being a script that was on a piece of paper to becoming a live production that the community could engage with. And I suppose that sits well with the Wexford Mental Health Association's aims to support people to live well and to support people with their recoveries, and also increase awareness within the overall community of Wexford around mental health and mental health issues. I don't think when they started that initial support role that they ever anticipated that perhaps this play would go as far as it has. I think we've up to 31 performances now that live across the years since its inception, both to public facing school audiences, RCSI, or the Royal College of Surgeons of Ireland, Smock Alley Theatre is part of First Fortnight. We've been to Carlow, we've been to Enniscorthy, Wexford, Gorey, Ross. You know, we've been into schools in themselves. So it's something that really, that was completely unanticipated when we started, that people would have an interest in hosting this and continuing to host it.
I think at Mental Health Ireland we use a whole series of channels to promote positive mental health, and we're always trying to find a new approach that people can engage with. And I think live drama is a really strong medium as well, because it's not only the performance itself, but also how the material comes together, stories are told. And I suppose I've also had an opportunity to be an audience member, and just to sit among young people and people across all the age ranges, a silence descends as people begin to relate to the characters, the story, the progression. And I think it really gives a deep insight into the mental health issues, and also is of itself positive health promotion as well. So it's a really strong medium, and we're really pleased to work with Wexford MHA in bringing this to a wider audience. So I think it's been really powerful.
Just as a live piece of drama, when you see school kids coming in, you know, and the rumpus of them and the freedom of a free class and that, and you see teachers standing on point duty and separating the messers from the quiet ones and all that kind of thing, and suddenly with the magic of theatre you see lights go up and the attention of every school. And we've been in, over 2,000 kids have seen this play, and we've been in schools in the inner city of Dublin, we've been in schools all over Wexford, we've been in schools in Carlow, and every time when curtains go up, the attention span of the kids and the silence and the impact has been absolutely massive.
The content and the message of it was so relevant to the students that were looking at it that it really felt like a kind of a, sometimes when you're doing a show, it's you and they're out there, and great, they enjoy it, but I always felt this kind of almost a circular experience, that we were almost in it together. It was never not special. Each show of it was always something that kids would go away going, Jesus, that was great, and really helped me to understand if they didn't have experience of it themselves, or what was great, those that did, either through family members or themselves, felt a real connection with what was on the stage, and we with them. So yeah, it was an emotional experience very often. You know, it was never something never ever just going through the motions.
So it's about bringing a mental health message to the widest audience possible, using every modality you have, whether that's the spoken word, whether it's podcast, online materials, video. But I think there's something very immediate about live theatre, and I think that people can relate to that, and the fact that the actors are responding to the audience and bringing the audience along with it, there's very little competes with that when it's done as well as it is in facing the crowd.
That was my first experience of an hallucination. I could talk to them through a voice in your head. I mean, I wasn't frightened or anything. She was there, the teacher. Well, I mean, she wasn't really there, but to me she was. I must have stayed there all afternoon. No one came looking for me. Nobody missed me.
One of the good things about A Face in the Crowd and having that follow-up workshop is that, I suppose, having seen the play, it allows young people to kind of discuss the people they met, the stories they met, in a kind of objective manner, so that they're talking about the character of Joe, and they're spotting things in Joe's story. What were the first signs that he became unwell? Who were some of Joe's supporters? You know, what were the things that, you know, further along in his recovery journey, what kept him well? So when a young person maybe hasn't got that life experience to apply these big ideas to themselves, they can begin that process by I suppose looking at through the lens of one of the characters in the play, and then gently beginning to apply that to themselves. And I suppose the idea of that is they don't need to have all the answers today, they don't even have to have all the answers today, but it's just opening that dialogue in a central way around mental health, how to keep yourself well, and how to keep yourself resilient and strong.
Last year my classmates and I came here to the Wexford Arts Centre to see A Face in the Crowd, presented by Discover Recover Theatre Group and funded by the Wexford Mental Health Association. It was, I have to say, a life-changing experience. What a powerful play. So powerful that afterwards I found myself opening up to my sister and telling her that I had been struggling and that I wasn't as okay as I pretended to be. It is such a relief to no longer have to hide behind a false face and pretend that all is well. Ladies and gentlemen, I am that face in the crowd. I am that person who seems to be doing fine. I am that person who pretended that all is well. A Face in the Crowd is a major turning point for me. It made me aware that I was indeed on a slippery slope. A Face in the Crowd helped me to regain my footing on terra firma.
The drama of it, no matter how often you see it, I think it has a profound effect on you. From my own point of view, let's say, I have a son that suffered. He was in his middle 30s before at surface, let's say, and I certainly didn't recognise it, and I don't know if he recognised it. So I just wonder, let's say, if he had seen the drama and I had seen the drama, would both of us been better educated to recognise the problem? And I think you would, and I think definitely as a parent, you definitely would seek help quicker, and I'm sure as a patient, you definitely would seek help quicker as well. So I think it's definitely a big effect that way.
I think the follow-up workshop was fantastic. I absolutely think it is an essential part of running the programme because they really marry and they work really well together. I think, you know, having that time for students to reflect on the stories from the actors was really important because I think if you just have the play, then you're leaving them a lot in limbo, and I suppose you don't know how it has really impacted on anybody. whereas like Mairead and Paula and Neil were fantastic. You know, having their professionalism and having them working with our students was really, really positive, and I know the students came out really engaged from it. And I think it is really essential that that is part of the programme when they're running it as well. The most positive thing I personally took from the play was, you know, that it came across that, you know, it's okay not to feel okay, and sometimes life does throw you this curveball. But to know that there are supports there, you know, if things aren't going okay for you, that you have different people or different organisations there to help you. For my students, I suppose they came out with a really important tool, and we actually use it as well as guidance counsellors, where they had, you know, kind of the spectrum really of mental health. So some days if you're feeling a little bit worried, like that's okay, it's normal, up to, you know, the severe end of mental health where, you know, you really need to go and get some support. And it named then, you know, the people that they can turn to and where to look for that support as well. So I think that was really positive, you know, that, you know, up to 300 of our students had that message going away. So I think overall it was really positive performance, really positive project to be involved in, and I'd love to be part of it again.
We all know that adolescence and young adulthood are difficult periods in a person's life. It's a time of great transition, major life events occur, and I suppose it's unsurprising to reflect on the fact that most mental health problems emerge during this period. So interventions that are protective of young people's mental health can be very beneficial. They can potentially prevent mental health problems from arising in the first place, but they can also give people the skills and abilities to be able to deal with and manage mental health problems better when they do arise. I think this is particularly important in Ireland because we do have very high rates of mental illness amongst young people compared to other European countries, and this is particularly acute amongst girls and young women who have particularly high rates of mental ill health. So interventions like Discover Recover, where they're protective of young people's mental health, can have several benefits. They can build mental health literacy, so this enables people to recognise the signs and symptoms of mental health. They can also build their skills and abilities, so they can talk about mental illness, they can seek help, and they know where to seek help. And I suppose finally, they can recognise the signs and symptoms in other people, so they can also reach out to other people when they see that they're also struggling.
One of the things that we've been very aware of throughout the process of the Discover Recover project is that hopefully one day that we'd find a sustainable home for this project. It's not as simple as it fitting into one little area, I suppose, because it fits within health, it fits within education, and it fits within the arts. So it's kind of, again, that broad spanning perspective on it. I guess we are at a fortunate point in terms of where Ireland is at and how they view kind of mental health within this country, that it's possible that it doesn't have to just solely belong to one area, and that there can be a more joint up thinking around how can we get projects and initiatives like this to continue kind of into the future.
I think an important point about facing the crowd on two fronts. One is that the people who engaged, whose own stories have been donated to this and allowed us to share, and there's been enormous generosity in that. And it's just that authentic voice is really, really powerful there. And I suppose I'm very conscious that to mount a production like this, bring it forward, develop it, work with actors, get that engagement, that's a long-term investment, and it's really important that we don't stop short, that we don't just do this on a year-by-year basis. I think we need to take a longitudinal view, and over a number of years, a multi-annual approach. And I think our new mental health policy actually speaks to that these are really good quality interventions, they're very effective, they're very impactful, and it's about getting these outcomes. But of course we need to make that investment in the first place, not just on a once-off basis, but into the future, so we can develop other iterations for new audiences into the future.
So when you feel yourself stumble, or you're struggling to get out of bed in the morning, you feel a darkness looming on your horizon, just ask for help. Tell a friend or a family member or a colleague or your GP, and if your GP doesn't listen, find another GP. But ask for help, because there's always a better, brighter day ahead.